Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IFTA Screen Discussion Series, putting focus on each of the feature films submitted for this year's IFTA Awards. Each week, we're putting a spotlight on a variety of diverse feature projects representing the best of Irish filmmaking this year. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by the filmmakers and star of the Irish horror comedy Let the Wrong One In. So I'm joined today by writer-director Conor McMahon, producer Trisha Flood, and actor Owen Duffy. So welcome, guys. Lovely to have you here. So I'll start off with sort of Conor and Trisha, who are responsible for this film. The way it uses Dublin and the way it uses a variety of Dublin locations in sort of the spookiest, most sort of Gothic way imaginable, and really presents this kind of incredible Gothic vampiric view of Dublin is really great. So could you kind of tell me how you came about using these locations and how difficult it was to shoot on location around Dublin?
Well, I guess some of the locations, one of them was the Bram Stoker Museum, which was in Clontarf, and that just seemed pretty fitting for, because I hadn't initially written it like that. It was originally just a random nightclub. And then when I went to have a look at that place, it was like, oh, well, I mean, it has to be here. It's like already like upped our production value. We don't have to make all this stuff, it's already there. But it was also, there was something nice about the fact that it had this link to Bram Stoker, and we were in Clontarf, and so I think that was nice, And then, I mean, some of the locations were probably out of convenience to it, where it's like, we shoot here, so we shoot in this general area,
Yeah, we were restricted in logistical terms because we actually shot during COVID. We actually started in level 2, and by the time we finished, the whole country was in level 5. So it was a little bit of how close can we keep people together? How less do we have to travel? We had some big days where we traveled outside of our bubble. But yeah, for the most part, we kind of, convenience was optimal for us, given where we were shooting in terms of like the world at the time.
Yeah, because the exterior of the vampire, kind of place was like, 5 doors down from the house we were filming, and so it was like, let's go over there, And
when you're shooting in somewhere like the, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and you keep things around. Anyone who's looking very, very closely can see things, but international audiences, they don't know. You get away with a lot in the movie magic world.
And when you're shooting in places like the Bram Stoker Museum, does it create more of an atmosphere on set of like, oh, there's possibly supernatural elements afoot, or do you find it creates a better sort of realistic vibe for the vampire action you're shooting?
God, I mean, it was weird during COVID, because everyone had masks, and and it was a whole different vibe entirely, I mean, it was almost like you didn't even get to have those chats with people. It was like, just let's shoot the scene, and even with that vampire club, like we had to, because we were only allowed 15 people, I think. I wanted a big vampire party, so we had to even green screen people and stick them in and stuff afterwards. So there was a less.
It was kind of it was unfortunate sometimes with the schedule, because if certain things were scheduled towards the end of the film, the vampire club being one of them, and as we were moving along, the levels were getting higher and higher, and the restrictions were getting more imposing on us. So by the time Conor got to his big nightclub scene, I think, we were restricted in terms of numbers. But also because the venue, everyone was, everyone had their own sort of guidelines as well. So you weren't just, doing the government guidelines, you were doing everybody's individual guidelines, and you were trying to keep everybody obviously safe and happy. And so it was kind of a mammoth sort of juggle around. But Conor's great. Conor's very adaptable, and even the whole, during because we started shooting in March, got shut down, and got back up running again. So, we were sort of, at that point, we were all just happy to be shooting.
Yeah. The supernatural was the least of our worries at that stage.
I think, yes, COVID restrictions are more frightening than anything that's in your film. Did you ever have to rewrite any scenes based on those restrictions getting worse, or was it more so just fixing things as you went along in production?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of rewriting. Like, I mean, some of it was just because we had more time, and it was just, can we improve this? There was probably a couple of things I had to rewrite. I think there was a night shoot that I couldn't get, so I had to rework around that and sort of rework that as daytime or something. So there was a couple of things, but not majorly, to be honest. I mean, we kind of sort of stuck to our guns, really, and it was just we pretty much got what we'd planned, I think.
Yeah, certain things we just have to be more mindful of and more so prepare for. Obviously it's a vampire film in the middle of a pandemic and people are biting each other's necks and stuff like that. So you just have to be very mindful of preparing in advance for those things. So in normal circumstances, you wouldn't think twice about that. It'd just be another day on the schedule. But for us, it was like 2-3 days before, Owen was tested, everyone was tested, everyone was negative, like it was all that kind of stuff, of making sure that, like, in fairness to all our supporting cast, they all had to come in like the day before, 2 days before, to be tested and all of that kind of stuff. So it was like more of a logistical thing to be thinking about, more so than we were still trying our best to shoot the script, but just making it as feasible as possible.
So over to you, Owen. You're sort of playing the character who kind of sets the whole tone of the film, like this big, crazy sort of vampire. He's sort of infected at the start and then he kind of goes berserk. Did you sort of find you had to go through your usual sort of acting process with this character? And was there a balance between sort of like serious acting method and just sort of letting yourself go crazy as this kind of unhinged vampire character?
Well, to be honest, like in terms of kind of preparing for it, like going crazy was kind of like that's a bit of crack for me. So for me, what actually made it a lot easier was that Connor was allowing us to go and do our thing and then trying to adapt to that. So I think Trish said there we were meant to shoot in March and got pushed. How long was it? 6 months or something?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, till October.
So we had already done rehearsals up until March, and then had another 6 months where we had locations as well already. So then we could rehearse at the location. So a lot of the prep that I would have done leading up to March, I got to do an extra 6 months that was in the location with the director, with the other actor, and we were able to kind of grow the story and character and all. So it just made it, by the time we got to set, it just was so fluid. Like the flow to it was great, and then we were able to improv a lot in the rehearsals. And Connor again wasn't too precious with the script, or he could rewrite it to kind of match what we had found, the funny parts you find, and you never get that on films. So did I have to do extra prep? It was kind of all within that 6 months, to be honest. So it was a bit of a blessing in disguise for me anyway. I don't know about you, but definitely for me and Carl, like it made it a lot more easier to be on set and just enjoy it. Yeah, go crazy and enjoy it.
Great. Connor, when you were sort of back to when you were sort of writing the film and originally conceiving of it, like what was the original origin of the premise, I guess? Did the Dublin element come first, or the vampire element, or what was you were you setting out to do?
Like the very first element was the idea of a Dublin vampire, and that just made me laugh, and I remember even just, you just throw out random lines like, oh, that would be funny for a Dublin vampire to say. So that character was kind of existed in my head for a while, but I didn't really know what the story might take or that kind of thing. And then it just clicked on me one night, the idea of him being stuck in a house for the day, and a kind of a daytime vampire movie, I guess, because I suppose I hadn't really seen that. And then, so I think they were the two elements. Once I kind of got that idea that it was a guy trying to sort of get into a house and be stuck in a house, it almost just flowed. Like I wrote it in about 2 weeks, certainly the very first sort of version of it, which was a bit different. It wasn't originally two brothers, it was two friends. And that was, and that was even back like when we did a promo with Owen. This was like 5 years ago or something. And, it was in that process we actually found Carl and decided that they'd be brothers, and that kind of came out of that.
So we're joined as well now by star of the film, Carl Rice. So question for kind of either of you, Carl or Owen, you're playing brothers in this film, and you feel very familiar throughout the film, and you're very, convincing as a pair of brothers. Did you know each other before you started shooting?
I'll take this one, Carl. You keep your eyes on the road, right? No, we didn't know each other before the film. I think Connor mentioned as well that I got cast kind of early, and then because it was supposed to be two friends, we were auditioning people kind of my age at the time, and for whatever reason, yeah, for Connor at least it didn't flow, and he wasn't finding what he wanted to. And then Carl came in kind of last minute. The DOP Michael Lavelle, he knew Carl from previous work, and he brought him in. And I think Connor, you've told this story where he actually was like, he's way too young, but I don't want to just bring him in and send him home. He's after making his way out here, so we'll bring him in anyway, just to be nice, kind of thing. But yeah, just when we started, it just kind of worked. And yeah, we didn't know each other, but for some reason, I think the dynamic worked on the in the audition. Sorry, but then when we had all the rehearsal time, we got to know each other over that time. So that's what I was saying. That by the time we got to this set, it just we had improv for nearly a year at that stage, and we had done the promo and got to know each other a little bit. So yeah, by the time you get to set, we were lucky that you got that time, because usually you don't. And yeah, it just felt very easy. Carl was very difficult, and he's a bit of a diva, but other than that,
that's not true.
No, it helps. All that rehearsal time helped, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Carl, how did you find the process of developing this character with Connor?
It was grand, because it felt like Matt and Deco were brothers. Like, I know they are, but when they told us like the background of both characters, we were like, yeah, it fits so well. So and then, like Owen said, when we were doing the rehearsals, we kind of just gradually fell into the character more and got to understand more about them, and we even progressed the storyline a bit more ourselves, and we'd be pitching things to Connor, and Connor would be on board with us. So it was actually handy enough. But yeah, as Owen said, like, just as we were doing the rehearsals, it got the both of us to know each other so well, to the point where we actually felt like brothers, I would say. And yeah, the characters just kind of fell into place then.
Great. Back to you, Connor. I feel like the most sort of maybe the most iconic image in the film is when Carl's character uses the hurl as a weapon, and it felt to me like, oh, that was probably an image you had in mind from the very beginning of developing the film. Were there a few moments like that were very important for you to include?
Yeah, I mean, it's an image I've had in almost every film I've made. The hurl gets pulled out at some stage. Back to
famous
like,
Connor.
Yeah, it was like back in like 2001, my college graduate film, I had a hurley stick, and so yeah, it's something I always tried to put in, but it kind of made sense to me as well, because it's a wood, and that's what you stab a vampire with. So with this one, it seemed, totally fitting. And then also to try and build on the sequence a bit more, like even, that using the heart as a slitter and knocking it out the window. It was too tempting not to do,
Great. I feel like the special effects throughout the film, like with all the vampire like biting and the blood and everything, is like so you get such great production value out of it, like, and especially in the sort of Dublin setting, it becomes very, very convincing. Did you have to like look hard to find people who were going to be able to do a really impressive job with that, or had you worked with them before?
God, it was tricky, wasn't it, Trish? Because like there was nobody available. Like at the start, it was like the foundation or something had sucked up every model maker in the country, and we were like, we're doing a vampire film and we can't find anybody, So then it was sort of a mixture. It was broken out into different people,
Yeah, it was probably one of the benefits of the pandemic was we were one of the first productions back, like us and maybe two other things. So we actually, by the end of coming back around, we kind of had our pick of people, and people were just excited to go back to work. But Madonna did most of the sort of makeup and
prosthetic effects
on sort of prosthetics. Yeah. Did she do the heart, Connor?
She did. She made the heart, yeah. And she even made the heart where you see inside the body, and she made a kind of she had to paint a kind of a sort of a background. Like it was like three layers of things that she created. Like, so that was really cool.
She's incredibly talented, but also I think was, relished the opportunity to do something like this. So we had Madonna on quite early. It was sort of the more practical effects that we sort of, everybody else was gone, like, the blood spatter, all that kind of stuff. the stuff in the taxi, the tubing, the wire work, all that kind of stuff we had to find kind of later on. But it was sort of, we had model makers kind of throughout the country working on various different bits of pieces of what they could do depending on where they are and what supplies they could get and stuff like that. So it was kind of a team effort.
Yeah, and the guys that would spray the blood, they were great. They were like, when I saw those guys arriving, it was like,
That was your
great.
favorite part of the day.
Yeah, but they'd be really like, be like, you'd have these chats about exactly the kind of what type of blood and the consistency, and you'd see them going off and then they'd make just the right nozzle, to give you the right spray of blood and stuff. So it was, even that is collaborative, even
in case you can't tell, Connor's a big fan of blood.
Especially when it's spraying especially when it's spraying in Carl's face.
Yeah, it was my worst part of the day when I was seeing them two lads come in.
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember how excited you were the very first time when we shot the promo. You were like, I can't wait to get sprayed in blood. And that enthusiasm faded pretty quick when you were just soaked for a whole day.
Does it get you more as actors in the mood when there's so many practical effects happening on set and there's blood everywhere? Do you start to believe you're in this vampire story for a few minutes?
Yeah, I suppose you do. Like, as in, and for me, I wasn't covered as much as Carl, so I completely understand how his like enthusiasm kind of dwindled as the time went on, because he was just covered in blood. And Carl, you can probably take over here. Like, the blood is sticky, so you're just
I used to have to scrub myself for about 20 minutes in the shower every day. But like, even when we were filming those scenes, you just get this big huge splatter, and then it's like you've got a big boost of energy to just roll with the scene then. So it definitely helps, I think. It
does help you kind of like you're never going to be in your head when that's happening. You know what I mean? When that goes boom, it does get you, just the energy instantly lifts up to continue the scene. Definitely. And I suppose I never looked at it that way actually, but you're right. When the blood was kind of splattered, you would get a bit of a like, oh fuck, and then start going into it and give into the scene,
Could you talk me through, Connor and Trisha, I guess, how the flying sequence at the end was done? Because it was really, really well done, and the sort of Dublin skyline was very realistically sort of set in the background, and I kind of wondering how you went about shooting that, and if there was any wire work involved or anything more complex like that. Yeah,
so this is where he's carrying him as a bat, flying him. Yeah. I guess that was a mixture of, green screen shots with the two guys, with Carl hanging on a wire, spinning around. And then Owen, like, we filmed Owen beside him, but on a green screen, so that the faces would match, or the timings would match. And then it was, that was we had a practical bat as well, like that was we ordered for like 25 euros. It had little wings that, it's always good when one
animatronic one.
Yeah. When one, and I think, did we have two? Or I remember we ordered a few because we were afraid they'd break or something.
Yeah, we got a couple from eBay.
Yeah, but it was like, it was that element. And then it was just like, because there were a few ways of how are we exactly going to do this. We always knew it had to be a little bit silly, and then, I guess we just shrinked Owen's head, then stuck him on the fake plastic bat, and then stuck that to Carl,
But that was always a running joke. I think, Connor, you and I discussed this before with the bat, is that the whole thing with Deco is that he's not the perfect vampire. He can't do everything that they're all doing. So the big head on the small bat and the kind of lopsided head, we thought would be really funny, that even though he eventually does transition, he can't actually do it properly. He's still kind of a bit defunct. So it actually worked well then when in terms of trying to do, because if we tried to do it perfectly in terms of the effects, and we wouldn't have had the money and the resources and everything. So you have to lean into the comedy in those moments. And then I remember Connor and I just thinking, wouldn't it be really funny if he was like, trying to fly with this like heavy head, because it doesn't quite work for him. And it just works really well then. And then obviously all of the stuff is drone footage of another beautiful pandemic related event was empty streets in Dublin, and being able to get probably access to, with Dublin City Council being very supportive with the film and stuff, and giving us access to, go across the Liffey and stuff like that, which maybe we wouldn't have got if we were, back in normal times like today.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember even the opening as well in, Transylvania, that Dublin Castle, but it was just like empty, so it was like we didn't
Yeah.
have to stop traffic or anything. It was just there was nobody was out.
It kind of adds to it definitely adds to the sort of horror, spooky vibes at the start of the film. The fact that the streets are so empty, like you can tell. I feel like a couple of films that I've seen that were shot during COVID have been able to take advantage of that sort of eerie, empty city thing that sort of filmmakers were striving for years, and they finally got it with COVID. It was sort of an unfortunate second advantage we got.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So the other sort of star of the film, along with Owen and Carl, is Anthony Stewart Head, who's obviously a sort of an icon of vampire media, having starred in Buffy. How was it convincing him to star in the film, and then what was he like to work with? Did he bring a lot of his experience to the set?
Yeah, I mean, he was like from the start just very enthusiastic, and he really liked the script. So I just, I had one conversation with him beforehand. You have to make that phone call, and it's like, is he going to say yes? Whatever you say to him, it's like, don't mention Buffy, don't mention Buffy. But actually, he loved talking about Buffy. He was, he was very proud of that, and so yeah, like I really enjoyed that experience. I mean, I don't know how the lads found it. I think as well, was he a bit of a mentor? Did he,
He was like one of the lads, to be honest.
Yeah, he was great crack. And I think me and Carl spoke about it before, like, or even when we were there, it was like, he just seemed like a big kid, like when he came on set. And again, you don't know how that's going to go, like we're two young lads, and well, you're young. We're two young lads in the start of our careers, and we're hyped up for this, and we've been waiting for so long that, like, you just don't know someone who's been in the business for years and someone who's coming in during a pandemic, and they could walk in and just be kind of very key to themselves. And he was just the opposite. Like, he came in and he was like, okay, what we do here, and he was just, again, like a big kid. Like, he was just cracking jokes. He was well up for the improv. Like, Connor let us all kind of bounce off each other, and we'd say mad stuff to him, and he'd just come back with something and
give it back.
Yeah. And it was just great. And again, it was just such a pleasant surprise, where, not surprised, but you really just don't know what to expect. And he just made it a great experience.
It was also as well, like, he really cared about it being as good as possible. Like, sometimes a stuntman might be doing a thing and he'd watch it, and if he thought he could do it, he'd step in and say, oh no, it'll be better if I do it. Once he kind of saw what we were trying to do, or, I might be trying to do a shot just for safety and it mightn't be as good. And he'd go, no, put me in the chair and pull me out the door. I'll be fine, so that was nice as well, just to see that, he'd be watching the monitor, and if he thought you could improve something, he'd kind of say it,
Yeah, it was great.
And we actually had to shoot, like, obviously, back to the movie magic part, we had to shoot Anthony's stuff together. Like, so when back in the early prep part of it, when it became apparent that it could be Anthony, that's kind of one of the reasons he's out in the shed, like, because we knew that character was going to be our name or our kind of person. So, it was structured that way, that Connor had cleverly, put it in the script that we could put him in the shed, and, we could be doing things in the house, because we shot him for about 5 days. So all of Anthony's stuff, and it's credit to the guys, because, there's parts of it where Anthony's there, and then there's parts where Carla's talking to an empty chair and stuff like that in different days. So they really did, like, a really good job. But he was brilliant. He was up for everything, and, like, it was in, like I said, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and it was the first thing he'd done since, like, coming back. And he just seemed really keen to get back to work and, like, throw himself into it. And yeah, he was really great.
Were there any specific Dublinisms or anything sort of anything specifically Irish in the film that he had explained to him, or couldn't get his head around?
Connor, wasn't it his idea to have the accent at the beginning?
Yeah, he wanted to try a little bit of an Irish accent when he came in as a disguise, So, but also there was
that wasn't.
What?
I was just gonna say, it wasn't written that way. It was written as a English.
Yeah, it wasn't written that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then there was debates over idiot and Egypt, I think.
Oh yeah.
He kind of, but again, he kind of wanted to say Egypt. He's like, I want to say Egypt. We're like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, he was great.
But he was great as well, even just like that. I think of it now, like because he was mad into trains and stuff, the character, like he did his own research on that and rang up friends that were into trains, and he'd come back with these sort of, you know, phrases or even just the names of the different train organizations, you know, which was cool. Like, you know, he was off doing his own research and bringing it back, and you know, I think that all helped.
Was there anything that Owen and Carl brought to the film in terms of their own research or any of their own personalities that sort of came onto set?
For me, eating the garlic chips, I really had to rehearse eating, just getting food into me. So I just done a whole lot of eating on set to prepare.
That's
Yes, you
very
did.
true.
That's very true. Very
That's
true.
where half the budget went.
Sweets for Carol.
Final question for you, Connor. You've done your killer clown movie. You've done your sort of vampire comedy. So what's the next sort of area of horror lore, I guess, that you want to tackle?
Gosh, well, I do want to step back into the slasher genre. You know, it is a genre I really like, and it's one I don't see a lot of. You know, but and lots of potential for blood spraying in people's faces. You know, but I think that, I mean, obviously the Irish folk horror is also an area that I'd like to do something. I mean, it's something I've been trying for years, you know, for like, you know, various ideas and stuff. So it's just finding the right one that clicks, because I mean, it is something we grow up with in Ireland. And I mean, again, even going back to college, like I remember making little horrors about the banshee and stuff. And again, probably our generation remembers our parents talking to us about that stuff like it's real, you know. Like my mum would still talk about hearing the banshee the night before her mother died, sort of stuff. So that kind of stuff is just in there somewhere, you know. Or a ghost story. I've realized I've never done a ghost story. So I mean, that's what I love about horror. It's just like the potential is endless for where to go, you know. But usually if I do a comedy, my inkling is to kind of do a slightly more maybe suspenseful one next, but you just never know. Whoever gives you the money, that's the one you do next.
Let's be honest.
yeah
Brilliant. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me to talk about Let the Wrong One In, which is in consideration at the 2023 IFTA Awards. It's been great hearing from you all, and people, I hope, will check out the film. And thanks so much for joining me.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thank you. Sorry for being late.
No worries.